in critique of Black female demonization, not miscegenation. How many times did you practice calling me bulldog, ugly, furious plague before it tasted like truth? In the schoolyard, did you watch the little Black girls running in the sun and note how that sun baked them darker? Did you learn to spell their names with a poisonous tongue? In the locker room, now infamously presidential, did you trade stories of conquests and lie to make yours lighter? Or is my body a prize only when it's splayed open, spread with sweetness for you? Did you let my body's gift curdle in your crude retelling? Does it hurt each time you call us unwantable? Does your mother's face fade deeper into black? Somewhere in a past we both know and always return to, I watch you beaten in the field, watch you clubbed to pulp by the big blue badge. There, I clean your wounds and kiss your body better, heal you with salve and a meal cooked slow. Somewhere, I put my body between yours and harm, between a blinding white and your black. Somewhere, I even put my body on the cross. Does this sacrifice mean nothing? Don't you understand how woman I am to bear you, feed you, clothe you, even beat you if it means you'll grow? Don't you see the mirror you shatter when you tell me what you think I'm not? Look, my dark love, at your hands. See what they can't grasp when you let me go.
Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the final installation of our Chat for Change Love Out Loud series. I am your host, Jerald Crook, the Executive Director of Higher Ground Society, and I'm very, very excited for what we have in store for you all this evening. Again, I just want to welcome you all back. If you've been tuning in throughout the series, we started almost a year ago. Like next week, I think would have been the first time we did this, if I'm not mistaken. And so it's full circle. But this is a conversational series where we are trying to model and emulate the positive conversations that we believe that will change communities and just make us better people as we try to connect. And we focused in on the first series on love. So our theme the name of this series, first series, is called Love Out Loud. And if you were with us, or if you haven't been with us this whole time, we started out with self-love, where we talked about how we want to, how to love ourselves and the importance of loving ourselves. And then we moved on and talked about relational love, where we talked about, love like a one-on-one or within a family or within maybe just a small group of people. And now we want to end things by talking about communal love. So that's where we are now. And I wanted to get you guys up to speed really quickly. And before I go too far, I definitely want to make sure that you guys know that this is an interactive conversation. So we will be having our eyes on the comment section. So first of all, let us know where you're watching from. Say hello. Give shout outs to where you're watching from. And then if you as we're talking, feel free to just throw comments out there and just, chat and respond to what we're saying, ask questions. We would love to interact with you. And I'll say, when you do this, this will actually enter you into a drawing for one of our gifts that we have to give away tonight. So keep that in mind. The other thing that I want to point out is that we have been working to, well, if you might have noticed that the branding for this event is very unique, very distinct. And I have to be honest, it's not at all original. It's inspired by someone else. So this is going to be a part of our other giveaway. What I want to do is ask you guys a question. The Chat for Change branding is inspired by what 20th century Dutch painter? Now, don't say it out loud, so to speak out loud. Don't say it in the ether at the moment. Don't say it in the comments if you know it. But as we go throughout the conversation, feel free to do your Googles. And I'm going to give you actually an idea of what we are looking at, or just to give you like another example. Just in case you've not seen it, this is what the branding looks like. So when you're out and you're looking for, 20th century Dutch painters, see if you can figure out which one of those painters, like whose artwork looks like this. That's what we're getting at. And also you can go to our Facebook page and our Insta and our Twitter to also see that again. But I'm gonna pop out of that. This is your one shot, not one shot, just kidding. But check that out, keep that in mind. And yeah. And then once you figure out you think you know who it is, please, by all means, email us the answer. And the first person to hit our email inbox with their answer will be the winner of a Starbucks gift card to keep you warm in these chilly days, these chilly aughts, if you will. I'm not sure if I used that word correctly, but anyway. So yeah. Who was a 20th century Dutch painter that influenced the design for this? So this is just a way to kind of celebrate the conclusion of the program. So I've done that, all our what do you call it, housekeeping. So now I'm actually going to bring on the folks who are going to be chatting with me tonight. And I'm going to start out first with my main man, G.I. the artist, hip hop. G.I. Magus, G.I. Magus, G.I. the artist. Yeah. Birmingham hip hop artist. He's been with us this entire time, and so very happy to have you back, G.I. Thank you for coming back. Next, I'll be bringing on our season regular, if you will, another season regular, Miss Ashley M. Jones. Ashley is the creative writing faculty at Alabama School of Fine Arts based in Birmingham. Also the author of 3 books of poetry, most recently released Reparations Now. Oh, boom, she's booked. She's ready. She's ready. This was a recent development that came about. Ashley, we definitely got to give you your flowers. Ashley was inaugurated as Alabama's youngest and first Black state poet laureate for the state of Alabama. Yeah. So we're so thrilled to that has happened for you. So congratulations. So also,
thank you.
I'm also glad you can still fit us in your schedule because I know I'm keeping up with you. So incredibly busy. So thank you for joining.
Family comes first. So.
That's right. Family. Yes. And obviously you saw Ashley as she opened up for us. She's ushering in the spirit of the arts and of reflection with her poem. So thank you again for bringing us in with that. And last but certainly not the least, we've made new friends. I'd like for everybody to welcome a new friend of mine, Miss Elizabet Elliot. Elizabet is based down in Mobile, Alabama, back home for me. She's an artist, a writer, and the executive director of the Alabama Contemporary Arts Center. They do a lot of incredible, groovy things down there. So yeah, this is our panel. How's everybody doing? How y'all feeling?
Good. Yeah.
Good. Great. Okay.
We're here to talk about orgies, right?
That's right. Exactly. We could, I mean, hey, love is love, right? That's what we're talking about. That's where we're at. But yeah, tonight's, like I said before, tonight's conversation is based on We're talking about love in our communities. And so before we get too far into the conversation, I think we need to kind of define what that actually is. So I want the first question for anybody to just jump in and tackle. What is community? Anybody can go.
I like that.
So,
That was communal silence right there.
That's
I like
right.
how we
We're-
just
we're
came
one.
together to not say anything. Community, I think, I mean, I don't want to give some sort of Webster's dictionary, so I'm gonna just give the GI definition of community being just kind of any group of people, hopefully working towards some sort of like when you think of communal, like working towards a common goal, right? Like there's a commonality amongst people within a community. So that can be, there's a lot of different types of communities that exist, but something binds those people together, whether it's proximity or experience or ethnicity or whatever, right? So some unifying thread amongst people will consist of a community. So I guess that's my best definition. Anybody got something better? Y'all can throw it out there. I ain't like look it up or nothing.
Yeah. I definitely think I want to just add to what you said. I think community also involves care. Ideally, in this group of people, you have mutual respect and a desire to care for each other. When you asked the question, Jerald, I actually thought about what community is not, because I think we've seen that more often than what community actually is. If we think about, our country over the last forever, I was going to say a
I
few
was about to
years,
say, yeah.
Just different things that have happened politically, even within our own racial ethnic groups. I think we've seen what happens when community is secondary to self or to money or power in some way. So yeah, for me, community means what Isaac or GI, the artist, said. I'm
It's all
sorry, I'm trying to
good.
use your
Hey,
trying to
listen,
use your
it's
name.
my name. I don't get upset if people use my real
Well,
name.
some people, speaking of community, some people will just bite your whole head all the way off if you don't use the correct
Listen.
artist name, even if you know them as a human first. Not that artists aren't humans, but I think y'all know what I mean.
Understood completely. Yeah.
But that's maybe my answer. Just people who are in a group, they don't have to be in the same geographic area, but there is the expectation of care. So I think we'll probably talk a lot about what that has looked like in our society
Sure.
as the conversation goes on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
well, and I think you guys are already parsing out the sort of there's intentional and unintentional communities. Like there's communities that are happenstantial or circumstantial, like a neighborhood that
Right.
you grew up in and didn't necessarily choose, is a form of community. And often there isn't like the care that's there is about shared culture or shared experiences, but it isn't a given. And then there's intentional communities, and that's something I think like our day and age and the past couple of generations have started to think a lot more about than previous generations because of social media, because the globalization of the world allows I can create and have and be part of a community of people with shared interests and shared experiences that aren't in any kind of proximity to me, where care is explicit and a shared goal is like part of what forms that connection. So it depends on whether you're talking about and what level of power of choice is brought into the grouping of people. Because there's a lot of need to address communities that didn't have any power of choice in grouping themselves together.
Yeah. Wow. Yes. So I want to say I just gave these folks thoughts from my mind, what I was wanting to talk about, and none of us have gotten together before and how now really to talk about these things. And I think all these answers that we came up with are so pure and they built upon one another so beautifully. So thank you guys for sharing that. One other thing, though, that I want to add, or I want to kind of throw out there for our consideration, is I'm ushering in the spirit of Auntie Bell Hooks, who recently left us. And I came across this. This is before she even passed, too, mind you. But this quote of hers, she said, "I think that part of what a culture of domination has done is raise romantic relationship up as the single most important bond, when of course the most important bond is community." And I think this resonated with me so hard, because I think, as we've been living through this pepperoni pizza that we're still living through, for those with pandemic, and just in general, as I'm, growing older and kind of forging a life of my own and leaving the house and everything, community is becoming ever more important. But it seems like that's like lost on the great, like Elizabeth, what you're just talking about, how we're part of this, like this global community. I mean, that's incredible, because I mean, the globe is like, what, we've got 7 billion people living on this planet, and we're all a part of this global community. But at the same time, I still feel like we're at our most disconnected as a community. So what's up with that? How do you guys feel about that, and what Auntie Bell said?
I think that it's difficult to parse out, right? Because there are definitely places where people are finding themselves more often, right? Like there are certain sectors of community that are just coming into a place where they don't feel so segmented, right? Because they're finding other people who are like them. But at the same time, as you start to have these micro communities form, you do see a fracturing of the global community, because people are, it's almost a tribalism, right? Like where you kind of gravitate towards the people who are more like you, but it also causes a distance between the people who are more desperate from you. So it is a weird space to be in, especially when in those smaller micro communities that exist, they aren't necessarily in close proximity to you, right? And so you still feel this level of isolationism, because the people who you find the most comfort in aren't necessarily within arm's reach.
Yeah.
So it's weird. So, if you're a member of the LGBTQ plus community in the rural Bible Belt, you feel disconnected from the rest of society, right? Even though there's this large growing community of people who identify in that same way that you can find comfort in, whether that's online or you go travel to a certain other metropolis, right? So it's just weird. It's a very weird space to be in, to have so much commonality, but then so much division at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely think, just thinking back to the Bell Hooks quote, power really is at the center of all the problems I think we have in our society, in our global society. So even in a romantic relationship, like the fact that we have decided that that is an isolated relationship, I think is maybe incorrect. You can still, and maybe you do need to still be very connected to a community, even when you've broken off into a pair or a throuple, if that's your thing. Once you've broken off, you do need others around you, not only for friendship and support, but just to create that community that can support you and your family as well. But as far as, our connectedness or disconnectedness, I think a lot about these last couple of, or 3 or 5 or 15 years of the pandemic. I think it's really shown me, and maybe all of us, that whatever communities we thought we were forming before maybe really weren't in earnest. I know in the first year of the pandemic, when we were all literally locked away in our homes, a lot of my friends and I would discuss, like, wow, why is it that these conversations that we're having now are so much more meaningful than before? Even though we used to be in each other's faces all the time, we weren't really saying anything, or we were using our energy in ways that weren't useful. We were associating with people who really weren't our community. So I think the pandemic has showed us that to survive, you really do have to find your actual community. And that community has to be, people who you connect with on a very deep level. During this pandemic, I'm not going out every Friday or whatever to do anything frivolously, because there's virus out there, so whoever I'm connecting with, I really have to feel confident in that person. I have to trust that person, and that takes time. And I think too, our society is a little bit too married to fastness. Like everything has to happen at a certain time in life, in a certain amount of days. Like even with romantic relationships, you hear people say, "Well, 3 dates in, you have to have done this, this, and that." What is that? That makes no sense. And
Right.
you can't put a time limit on forming a bond. It takes however long it takes. So
Yeah.
that's my little spiel.
Sure.
And of course, capitalism has everything to do with it. But
Yes. Yeah.
I love how you just casually throw those very seldom used words like throuple into a conversation. It's just beautiful. You're such a very talented wordsmith. I love it.
Absolutely.
well, thank you. I try to be progressive and inclusive at all times.
It's always capitalism, isn't it? Like,
Right. Yeah.
one of the things I think bell hooks for me is pointing to is like we have sort of a cultural set of assumptions that are a hangover from the Enlightenment, and there's a lot of false dichotomies that we operate with, and one is this sort of privileging of individuality that, like, culturally in our media and sort of throughout our politics, we understand sort of like the most important self is the individual, and community, sort of privileging romantic love is an extrapolation of that individuality. But that also assumes that like your identity is something that can be isolated, or like something that's importance exists in a vacuum in its value. And one of the things I think a lot about is that like identity, it requires community. Like we require exactly what Ashley was saying. Like we require a network of people, and we actually build who we are and how we understand our value and meaning in the world based on all of our relationships. Like,
True.
and a lot of that like falls between like I am similar or I am different. Like you don't actually have a way of understanding your identity outside of like, I'm not like other girls. I'm just like one of the boys. I see you, Jerald, and I relate to you. And I understand myself better when you talk about your experiences. And I see this individual, and I don't like, I am different than them. And so because we build identity relationally, and we have to have those markers, like we know when they're missing, because that's when we feel lost. Like that's when I don't know who I am, because I'm not feeling my value to others.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great segue into the next question. I think maybe we can, maybe there's an answer to what you just said. This issue that comes up when we don't, reconcile our identities with our communities. But what does love in communities look like? How does love serve a community? Can love help us out with the issues that come about? From what you just stated, Elizabeth. Anybody have an idea? So there's 3 questions I just kind of like jammed together. But that's my mindset. What do you guys think about love in communities?
I think any well-functioning community, that's kind of the basis of it, right? Like in a community that functions the way that it should, there is some level of, because we have this commonality, there should be some level of love that exists between the communal members. And the communities that feel fractured are the ones that have that absence of, any form of empathy or ability to reach out to someone and embrace them in a meaningful way. And so, what does it look like amongst communities? It's just, like I said, it's being able to understand, because we have this commonality, despite what things we have difference, the commonality that we have amongst one another should allow me to kind of appeal to your humanity and you appeal to mine. And then we find ways throughout that common thing to build upon some sort of meaningful relationship that allows us to show that empathy on a day-to-day basis. I think about things here in Birmingham, when we talk about community and, the recent winter storms that happened, and we have our neighbors here in Birmingham who are out in the cold, because they don't have a home to go in. And like, what does love look like for those people?
Mm.
And the empathy necessary to say, you're not less than a human, or you're not less than worthy of me showing you some form of love and allowing me to the community to embrace those people in a real way. Right. So there's a lot of ways that can be shown on a broader level within like regional or local communities. But, again, there's broader terms around community, and I don't want to hog the microphone too much, but that's just one thing.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think community love has to be anything but performative.
Mm.
Just to your point, Isaac, it has to be more than saying in front of people, here's what I believe, here's who I support, and then never actually showing up for those people.
Right.
I think a lot about the year 2020, which of course we saw lots of ways in which our community support was performative. I'm a teacher, so you already know how that went down when the pandemic, started. We were looking around and saying, wait a minute, I thought everybody loved us as teachers. Like, you want us to go into schools before we know enough about the virus. We're trying to protect your children. It just got very disheartening, to be honest. And so, I definitely think that has maybe not changed my idea about community, but it has revealed maybe what I always thought was true, which is that a lot of the structures that we've built in our society are based and built on performance alone. Even just thinking about, all of the streets across the country now painted with the words Black Lives Matter. I think many of us knew as soon as the paint hit the street that there would be, in maybe all of those states, every city with something painted there, some Black person's blood will also be there someday. And so what does the painting mean if there are not also, real things happening within the communities? If there's not a discussion here in the communities or reparations, y'all already know that's my book title, but I'm really serious about that. We need to think about that. That is what community can look like. And it's not always, fun, happy, easy. It's sometimes very difficult to look at ourselves and say, I have not been caring for you properly. Just like what Isaac brought up, our neighbors without homes being outside and not having a warming station. We need to, again, look at ourselves and say, how can we help? What are we doing as a community if there are some of us, and again, you have to use us there too, instead of them. There are some of us who need this basic care. Are we providing it? Can we provide it? How can we provide it? What can we do? So.
Yeah.
Well, I think both of those comments point to like another question that I have, which is, how do you love a community that isn't yours or that you're not part of?
That's good.
How do you love anyone that you don't feel connected to? And how do you build connections across all of these sort of dividing lines we have between different communities and between different cultures and life practices? And it's sort of what I was pointing to before. Love is something we understand really immediately because it's a set of physiological responses in a romantic sense and in our immediate networks. Like, it's easy for us to love those people. And a lot of the time, love your friends and your family and your romantic partners is something that happens to you. It's like you're managing a set of physiological responses that, like the oxytocin in your brain and like, the hormones, like all of these things and all of this backlog of shared experiences make it instinctive, like, to show your affection and to have a certain level of generosity of spirit. You're willing to forgive. You are willing to inquire. The people in your immediate life you love by constantly trying to learn about them and asking them questions. And you actively look for those connections. You look for ways to build empathy. you look for a deeper understanding of what their experience is. And it's easy to find the energy to do that. What's hard and like, but the only path I see out of what Ashley was pointing to around sort of the performance of it, is through a set of actions that aren't comfortable and don't feel natural and don't feel good, that aren't instinctive to you. And, trying to sort of build a road where, there's so much more to cut down as far as trees and debris and like getting to the ground to lay flatter. You have so much more work in front of you to try to love someone at a further distance from those sets of experiences.
Absolutely. No, I'm so glad you said that. So I guess one way I would personally summarize that is that, and I don't know if we even talked about this in the previous conversations, but love is an action, and you can't just sit back on your laurels. Like you can't, you really shouldn't sit back on your laurels in your personal relationships where you love people, but it is kind of easy to do that because you kind of take it for granted. We end up taking for granted, and we know that love is oftentimes going to be there, especially if it's like, generally, not all the time, but generally if it's like a parent to a child or to a, even like a partner, that kind of situation, that love can, unfortunately, I think we put that in autopilot and kind of ride on that. But when it comes to our community, when it comes to people that the person that cuts you off in traffic, or when it comes to the person that will not, that keeps throwing their trash, and these other community members that you really can't control because your connection to them is very limited in some ways, you have to actively, cognitively, like make a decision to love that person so that you can continue to keep the community. So thank you for that. I haven't got a chance to say that because it reminds me of an old gospel song that we used to sing, like, about how easy it is to love, and it can be, but sometimes I think when we get older and we get into these situations that stretch our patience and that sort of thing, we find out that loving isn't necessarily the easiest, especially in a community where there are so many different variables. So speaking of variables,
is it the Jesus in Me? Is that the song that you're talking about, Jerald?
You can sing it, Jerald. Go ahead and sing it.
Yeah.
The Jesus in me.
No.
The Jesus in me. That's how it was our youth choir song.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mama. Shout out to my mama for teaching us that.
Anyone who's watching, Jerald is a really amazing singer, and he needs to release an album post haste.
I love
gospel hits only. That's all I want from you. The old gospel songs.
Get out. I appreciate that. But so we're talking about the differences and how
that was my fault. I took us on that tangent.
And that's community love. I'm supporting you. I'm going to encourage you. We're still on topic.
Yeah, we are. Thank you for keeping us and getting exemplifying love in our communities. You're going to get an award for that. But yeah, what do you do when you are in the communities with these people who, you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, like you don't necessarily have much in common with, or you have these, generally have differences with? That can be challenging, especially as we continue to live in a more and more globalized world. Where differences are common. How do we navigate that? What do we do when ideological and values differences in communities, they challenge the ability to love?
I really think, honestly, if we could get to a place where we understand we're surviving together, like even if I don't agree with you, even if, let's say there's, a government official who just made a ridiculous comment about African Americans versus Americans. Maybe y'all have heard this. I don't agree with that person by any stretch. But I have to understand that as a part of the human community here on planet Earth, I want that person to survive either way. If I can set aside, and I'm not saying like this like aisle thing, I don't want to get into the aisle and reaching and all of those things. But what I am getting into is we need to, as a community, at least in the United States, I can't speak for anywhere else, but we need to get to a place, and we're not here, where we actually value the actual life of everybody. Before we even get to what do you believe, what do you all of this, if we could get to a point where we understand you are alive, so you matter, so you're worthy, and so I'm going to respect that life at its most base level. I'm not going to create conditions where your life is threatened. We can argue till the cows come home about, whatever, God, money, whatever, but I'm not going to, if we could get to the point where all of us say, I will not make it so that death or destruction is in your immediate path. I think we'd be better off if we could just make it there, but we are so far from that place, unfortunately. We're not even close, I think, to even having that discussion, because people are still seeing it as, oh, well, I need to survive, me, myself.
Right.
Not understanding that all of us are helping each other. When you go to the hospital, you're not operating on yourself. At least I hope not. Somebody has to do that for you. That person didn't teach themselves how to operate on you. Somebody taught them. That person maybe has kids at home. Somebody has to watch the kids. We're all relying on each other. It's not, there's not a hierarchy to it. We are all on the same level of we need each other. Even the billionaires going up to space when they don't have any business going up there, they need people too. When their spaceship doesn't function because it wasn't made by astronauts, they're going to need somebody to help them. So let me stop, because the internet records everything.
But it's true though. Yeah.
I think you hit on the essential issue, right? Like when the word there that I focus on in that question is values, right? Like what do we actually value? And then I want to harken back to what you said before about like the performative nature of how we express those values. Like if you strip down to like the bare essentials of what people espouse as their values, it has a benchmark of community and, love for everybody, right? But like how we express that often doesn't seem to resemble in any way those things, right? And if we can figure out how to come back to, I said this earlier about the thread that binds us together, the commonalities amongst us, and use those things to express those values that we shout to the rooftops that we have, right? Like those are the things that will allow us to, even if we differ in a lot of ways, find a way to coexist in a peaceful and a meaningful way that can allow everyone in the community to have some level of elevation, right? Like, again, I understand hierarchy is going to exist within whatever, but that's not the point. The point is not just because I am not on the same level as you does not mean that I deserve love less than you, right? Like I don't deserve to be treated in a less meaningful way just because you and I are not on the same whatever plane, whether it's educational, financial, regardless of what that situation is. There's no reason why my humanity does not deserve to be acknowledged and loved in the same way.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think about what I was told when I was young, which is that you teach people how to love you. And
factual.
I think it's really, and you're going to be so surprised at this being my answer, Jerald, but I think it is the weight and the importance and the gravity of the arts and the weight of being an artist in today's moment. And I mean that across all expression and mediums, like musicians and poets and visual artists and performing artists are who give us diversity of experiences. Like their job is to create expression that is different or that represents. And I think diversity of representation of experiences is something that we're starting to see a lot more of because of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a good thing. We're starting to sort of see inequities in the representation that we have in music and film and visual arts and all of our institutions. But those are also, artists and poets and musicians are creating things that nobody asked for. They're creating new material in the world. Mm-hmm. And that new material has the power to change communities and culture and change value systems. Like the value systems we have today come from a long legacy of cultural production that came before us, and that tide can shift. You know, after the Industrial Revolution, the art movements that shaped the next generation had everything to do with like a rearranging of priorities. And I think that's where we are culturally now, that like visual artists and musicians and poets have a responsibility or an opportunity, depending on how you want to look at it, to expand the pool, expand our view of the world where it has been way too limited. And that's the way to love in. That's the vehicle, because if I see and know your story, I can relate to it and I can fall in love with it, and I can understand its value and its meaning in the world better than speculation. Better than me sort of trying to sit here and theorize what a community needs and wants and values.
Wow. Yeah. So this kind of it's funny. This conversation, this is what got Elizabeth here. She's thought a lot about this because part of her academic work, her thesis was literally about love in communities and how we use the arts to manifest that sort of thing. And so, Elizabeth, thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront, because it's full circle. Again, High Ground Society is very much so about using the arts and the humanities to form understanding and community. There it is. And so, Elizabeth, thank you for reminding me to do my job and to lay it out plain for everybody else. That's it. That's what it's really about. I mean, it's just, so like, you know, if you like listen to the music of someone from like a different country or something, or you listen to like, particularly if you listen to the High Ground Society podcast, we had an artist on who is from India, and she's a Carnatic musician. And so there's so many different stories in her music tradition and so many different things that come out about her culture through her music that I've learned from, you know, listening to her music and talk about it. Like that has forged our bond, and it has, you know, made us even closer. So I think that's what Elizabeth's talking about, that kind of thing. Like if we dig into if we use the arts as a vehicle to understand each other better and to value each other, like G.I. was saying, you know, I think, and G.I. and Ashley both are saying, I think that will be in a good spot to be able to actually love through our differences. But on top of this question, one of the other things that I wanted to ask about, so we talk about like this is just like on the surface level of differences. One of the things that I'm concerned about, though, is wrestling with the idea of loving. So, like, let's say people in the marginalized communities loving the general community that actually is part of their marginalization. Is it cruel, or, you know, is it cool that we continue to, or we ask of them to still find some kind of love for, or is it okay that we do that? What do you guys think about that? Because I know there are some people who are just like, you know, I don't have to love white folks. Like, you know, there's some people of color like, I don't have to love white folks, or there are some queer people who are like, I don't have to love straight folks, or trans people who also who come into conflict with, you know, cisgendered folks. So, but I think I would like for us all to love each other. Is that a good aspiration, or what do you guys think about that?
I'm gonna let somebody else talk first on this one.
I think it has, like, I don't know that it is love. Like, I think it might be comfort. I think it might be a mutual identifier. You know, and it's a hard thing to sort of parse out, because there's a lot, like, trauma bonding is a thing. It's a thing a lot of us do. And it also, there is a lot of policing that communities do around identity and trying to maintain as an act of protection for that identity. And so poor communities police activity when somebody tries to sort of get on the up and up and get out of poverty. There's a lot of tools of judgment that will come from their immediate community and family, often around you're trying to sell out, where they understand that as an act of rejection of and therefore a threat to how they value themselves. So when we have an identity that we've built in relationship to other people, change sometimes can be seen as a threat. And like the desire to sort of change that identity can be taken as a rejection. So a lot of times, and we do this in our personal relationships, you know, you have to be careful not to get fixed on, well, this is who you were when we got together and this is who we were to each other. I need you to stay that person, so that we can maintain this relationship, which is really about risk and, you know, not wanting to lose something that you value. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to advocate for fluidity around those values, because a lot of these things aren't necessarily always fixed points. They move around.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah. Anybody else want to add on to that?
Yeah. So, you know, I think what I want to say about this is understanding that though I identify as part of a community, I am not that community. Sure. Let me try to make sense of what I'm saying. Like the whole idea of eat the meat, spit out the bones, right? Like everybody who's a part of a particular type of community. So I'll use an example you did. So as an African American, if there are, you know, people who are not African American, it doesn't have to be white, people who are not African American who have some issue with me, that doesn't mean that every single person who looks like them has that same issue. Right. And so that doesn't mean I need to hate you. I can hate the actions of this particular person and figure out how to love you, though you exist in the same type of community as them. Right. Like just because there is a cisgendered person who has an issue with a homosexual, trans, blah, 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 does not mean that now you have to hate every cisgendered person. Right. Like you can figure out who are the people who, you know, we like to use the term, you know, of people who are allies. You have to figure out who your allies are amongst other communities and not just push everyone away that doesn't exist in the same community that you do, because you feel for some reason that that shared experience that they have will now mean a shared hatred towards you, right? Like that's just not how it works. Like people do exist even though they're a part of this community. Just because I live in a particular side of town does not mean I have to hate everybody who ain't from over here. Mm-hmm. Right. Like that's just crazy. That's a gang mentality. And we can't, you know, you Beyonce people, y'all get this. Y'all hate everybody who don't love Beyonce. Y'all need to calm down. I'm just playing. I had to throw that shot out there for no reason whatsoever. You know,
you knew that was gonna touch.
I did that on purpose. But I still love y'all. My you know, I get it. I get See, Jerald, you're part of the hive, and I love you. See,
and this hive member loves you. Let me tell you, that's real though. That is so real. We have to be able to. I'm so glad you said that. That's a liberating, and which is love. It does liberate, right? That's a liberating way of looking at that, because we have so much work to do, and we need to be able to do it as a community, and we can't do it if we're like hung up on this, you know, this generalized, you know, animosity or whatever. So I'm glad that you pointed out like that. Ashley, did you want to add on to anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I guess, like both Elizabeth, excuse me, I'm sure everybody does that to your name. My goodness. Elizabeth and Isaac were saying, I think separating the oppression from the humans who participate in oppression is very critical. Something that I talk about a lot. Something I talk about a lot with students and whoever will listen, honestly, is that, you know, it could be very easy for you to listen to my work and conclude that I hate a certain group of people. I don't hate anyone, first of all. I don't have that in my heart. I'm trying to go to heaven. I don't hate anybody, you know. But there are systems that I really think we should fight against. So, for example, as a Black person, I don't think that we should just, you know, blindly hate every white person who exists. I don't think that's right. But I do think we can agree that weaponized whiteness, white supremacy, white supremacist patriarchy, all these are things that are hurting us and also hurting white people. So if we try to attack that thing, then we can become a better community, which doesn't mean that, again, with the example of people who differ in opinion from me being in community with you means that I want to eradicate the thing that's making you think this way. And even if you still think that way, if that thing is gone, maybe we can exist, better. But yeah, I definitely think we're, again, not at that place in America at all. We really have not grasped the idea that these systems of oppression oppress everybody, even the people who think they're benefiting the most. I mean, yeah, you're going to get some short-term, even some long-term privileges, some generational privileges, but eventually, it's going to poison you. It's going to sour. If something is poisoned from the beginning, which we know these things are, it's going to still be poison in the end. Even if, you kind of ride a high for a little while, you're going to come down. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about these days, is focusing less on who is this one person who is actively oppressing me. I mean, yeah, like if it's danger, yes, I'm going to focus on that and get out of danger. But I think we should all try to like back up and understand what put this mindset in place in the first place. What is the thing that's really hurting all of us? And stopping us from being able to be a true community. And maybe if we understood that love doesn't mean that we're just all up behind each other, running up behind each other and, happy laughing all the time, I think we'd be in a better place. Love in any relationship, like whatever idealized picture of marriages or partnerships, let's throw that in the trash, please. Friendships, all of that. Everything is way messier than we allow it to be. So I'm gonna stop. I'm rambling.
No, that's a word.
That's good stuff, though.
Ashley's name in my phone is Evangelist Jones, because she'll have a word every once in a while, and so like that was definitely one of them. But I think we have a question, but I think Ashley might have just answered it. But I want to give everybody an opportunity to kind of to address it. But Ari Trammell from Auburn says, what about the exhaustion that comes from navigating these circles, attempting to find those people? So, like, again, like I get this. And I think I'm glad that this question came up, because we need to be able to think about this. How do we not get tired of having to navigate this love thing, trying to be lovely, trying to love out, what can you do to handle the exhaustion? Because the truth is, I'm tired. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but
I was just about to say the truth. The truth is, as what's that lady's
Tamala
name?
Man.
Thank you. Tamala Man said. Truth is, I am tired. I mean, I literally, this is what I do in life, is go around and read about, liberation, let's all get free. And of course, I get very fatigued with turning on the news, or people asking me the same questions, or microaggressions or macroaggressions. I don't think I believe actually in microaggressions, by the way. Like, I think it's all just aggression. But all of these things are really frustrating. And, being a Black woman anywhere in the world, like, I cannot enumerate the amount of like dodging I have to do of negative energy that comes my way. But I think what keeps me going is just, I don't know, paying attention to the spirit. I always talk about the spirit, and all of us have access to some sort of spirit, whether we call it the soul, call it the universe, God, whatever. That thing does exist everywhere. So as long as I can keep my eyes on the spirit and what the spirit is leading me to do, that usually replenishes my energy. Even if it's the 95th time somebody has asked me, can I tan because I'm Black? I can say, you know what? I can choose to turn away from that question and redirect the conversation. The spirit can lead me to that person's spirit in another way, So that's maybe something we can do.
That's beautiful. And that's love in and of itself. Sometimes love is also an inaction. Just like, sometimes a response to a question can be no response. So there's that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else got any self-care tips while trying to navigate love in the community?
Get a good therapist.
Get a good therapist. Heck yeah. Also be a part of group therapy. Whenever I first started doing therapy, that's my therapist tried to get me to get in a group, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm just now like I'm I'm just not figuring out this thing on my own. So like, what do you? But it's right. That's part of forming community.
Well, yeah, and that's part of it's having a coach and sort of an accountability structure outside of your outward facing work for your inward facing work, because the two have to be in balance. Like you can't just shovel things out. You also have to put them back in.
Absolutely. GI.
I mean, I don't listen. It's tough. When I saw the question, I immediately was like, yeah, man, trauma is real, right? Like you have these traumatic experiences that color your perception moving forward, and it's difficult to allow a new person to experience you fresh when you have so much of yesterday still lingering, right? Like, morning breath is real. Like that's a funk that you brought with you to the next day, right? And somebody has to figure out how to love you through your morning breath at some point in time, or, they are only going to have to deal with the toothpaste smile. And that's just not the reality of who we are on a, 24-hour basis. But yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. I don't know that there's a good way, again, other than addressing the trauma that led to the place where you now, where you are, you grew up in a certain neighborhood and fireworks on the 4th of July make you jumpy, right? Because you've been dealing with the noise of gunshots your entire life. You know what I'm saying? Like there are things that you have to address internally before you're able to even get to a place where you can start to see people as individuals and not members of a collective, matrix bot. That's hard. I don't know that there's an easy way to be able to do that, to deal with that exhaustion, other than figuring out, like Elizabeth just said, replenish, figure out a way to pour back into the places where you feel at deficit so that you have something left to give.
Absolutely. It's as someone who is loving my new therapist, one of the recurring things is she always asks, she comes back and she asks me, she's like, so have you done this that we talked about doing? And I'm hard-headed and I don't most of the time, but that's like a recurring theme for her. She's like, you got to do the work to continue to heal yourself. And it'll be really great if we were born with this, somebody let us know that the rest of your life, you're going to end up having to heal from everything that's happened to you before. And that's what it is. You have to find a way to pour into yourself. Like you said, replenish is a great word. I love that. So yeah, this is great. And I hate that we have, the time is not infinite for us, but we do have to kind of bring it to a close. And so one of the last question that I want to ask of everyone is, I got one thing. I want to point out, my friend Lee Wilkins right here just said that therapy is good, and so is having a group of people, friends who can hold space for you and let you be real, who can fill you up when you're running on empty. And that's community. And boom, that's a love language, just being able to offer someone quality time. We talked about that last time in the relational love conversation. Quality time, acts of service, that's showing up for somebody and listening to them. That's you knocking out 2 love languages at once if you can participate in something like this. So absolutely, thank you, Lee, for sharing that. So the last question that I want to get at is very specific to a specific community. But so yeah, how can we love better in Alabama and all the things that so there are a lot of things to love about Alabama. You're just like, boom, yes, I love Alabama. But then there's some things about Alabama that just really test your gangster. That just really test your spirits.
Yeah.
So how can we love better through those not so shiny points?
I mean, I definitely think Alabama needs to learn how to love itself first, because I think what I have observed in my 31 years on planet Earth, in the state of Alabama, is that we definitely have, the state itself seems to have a self-hatred that runs very deep. And so how could we as Alabamians not inherit that if we're born here, And it's not just Alabama's problem to solve. I mean, I think the whole country has a lot to do to get to a place of real self-love. So yeah, I mean, I think unlearning that feeling is a first step, and understanding that a thing doesn't have to be perfect in order to love it.
Mhm.
In fact, nothing is perfect, and we still love other stuff, and it's not perfect. So yeah, maybe that's a start.
That's a great start.
Yeah, I want to echo everything Ashley just said. We have a self-esteem problem. I think a lot of that, I mean, think about a child being raised, being told it's ugly and stupid and all of that its entire life. That's how we were raised in Alabama as far as a state identity and portrayal in every movie, like every story. There's a lot in books and storytelling and films that is beautiful, but there's a lot more portrayal of the Deep South as an uneducated, sort of backwards, poor space. And so it's nobody's fault and everybody's fault. And it's so just expected and typical that we would have we would have a struggle around how to sort of see ourselves as valuable within a broader global or even United States context. But to what she said, like there is, for me personally, I, like a lot of people, had the opportunity to leave. And after leaving, I also had the option to stay gone. And in my early 30s, I chose to come back. And even though, my particular career path, there's not really any opportunities. Like it was kind of a crazy, stupid thing to do to come back here because it's not like I could expect a career out of it. And I've managed to, build one despite that. I think partly by looking for ways to be part of the solution. Because I have a deep and abiding love for this place. I think there is magic here that, I think there's magic here. I think the diversity of our ecosystems, the way that our cultures operate, just being sort of on the Gulf Coast, the culture of the Deep South is, better than any other fucking culture. So I want to build and support that. And I understand its deficits, and I understand the problems and the lack of resources, and the status quo here is probably further from where I could go other places and it would be easier to do the work that I'm doing. I could go other places and it would be easier to have the identity that I have. I haven't chosen easy because I think there's soft ground here to grow this place in an amazing direction that is so much more gratifying than going somewhere and sitting in a more comfortable status quo.
Absolutely. Yes, I love to hear that about this. Other people feeling the same way about the state that I do. Thank you for sharing that. I hope people are taking notes. GI, you got anything? What you got? How can we love better in Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to echo, what's been said already. I think the first thing is just an actualization of self, right? Like figuring out who we are as Alabamians, and that means embracing even the ugly, as Ashley was pointing out, even the ugliness of the state. And, we can get into, debates about critical race theory and all that kind of stuff. And, having to know the historical value that has in teaching it. And then figuring out ways to move beyond the ugliness and see the beauty, right? That's a part of self-actualization as well. Like not getting stuck on the ugly, but understand the beauty of the landscape of Alabama. I was at work one day, back when I actually went to an office, before COVID was a thing. And we were sitting in our office, and one of the young ladies that was sitting next to me looked out the window and she pointed and she said, "Oh, look how green it is." And, in my mind, I'm like, it's springtime. What do you mean how green it is? Right. She spent the majority of her life in Florida, so they didn't have like hills with greenery, right? And so she was noticing the landscape in a way that I had forgotten to appreciate, right? And understanding that there's beauty in the space that you're in helps you to love that space better, right? Understanding that there's beauty in the person that you're next to helps you to love that person differently. So I think that, understanding and coming into a place of, again, embracing the ugly and knowing that it exists, but also finding that beauty is one wonderful way that we can figure out how to love this state better. And then the other portion, I'm going to go back to something Elizabeth said earlier, which is unleash the artists, man. Like the artists get to tell the stories, paint the pictures of a place in a way that help you to see it for what it is, to see it through someone else's lens, to see it through different, experiences. And those things help to highlight areas of your state that maybe you aren't able to express yourself, right? Like you can point someone to a song, you can point someone to a portrait, you can point someone to a poem, and that helps to tell that story better. And then once you start to see it in a different light, then you can start to love it in a different way.
Absolutely. Love that. Thank you. I love the fact you talked about the ugliness. And we all have had maybe some kind of interaction where we've had to love someone through their ugly parts or despite their ugly parts. So Alabama has that too, just like everybody else. And so we have to love through that. And also I love the fact that you talked about the natural aspect of Alabama and its beauty. And that's also kind of connected to me, for me, the arts again, but you brought that in yourself. But because there's ugliness and beauty in the arts, and
Right.
it loves all in that. It's like one big gumbo. It's all just like mixed together. And if we just take the time to take a breath and look next to us, look around us, and appreciate the things around us, I think that we'd be in a much better spot to love better. So and if we already feel like we're there, where we can love that we are there, we can just love better. Once we take that breath. This is incredible. I wish we could continue to talk forever. And we'll get together in a post-pandemic, whatever that means, world, I guess, and talk things out. But thank you guys so much for humoring me and chatting with me about this thing that I love. We're gonna now kind of awkwardly shift to our giveaway portion, but then stick around because I want you guys to tell me more about what you got going on. But I'm so very grateful that there are some folks who did engage us in conversation. So thank you very much. We've got you here, and we're going to now. Actually, I'm tripping. Let me pull it back. So the giveaway is actually going to be. It's sponsored by 1977 Books. So hopefully you guys are familiar, maybe not, but I'm about to do a quick little plug for my peeps. 1977 Books. As soon as I get my life together. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. Boom. Yeah, 1977 Books. They are an abolitionist community bookstore based in Montgomery, Alabama, right there on Dexter Avenue. So just like if you can get at the Capitol and roll down the hill and wind up there at their front door. That's how close it is in downtown Montgomery. They are some incredible folks who really, really believe in community. Their bookstore, one of the things I love about their bookstore is that it's volunteer driven, so that everybody that works there is a volunteer. Nobody's getting paid. Everything, all the work is done for the edification and the building up of the community. So they spend a lot of time doing, obviously, providing books and different other little, bookstore-like items. But they also have programs. I know right now they have a book reading club that's about to start next week, and they're going to be talking about, I think identities, if I'm not mistaken, or sexual and gender identities. And they're going to have an incredible time, I'm sure. So definitely check them out on social media. Go to their website. You can support them through Patreon. That's something I'm doing actually right now. They started during the pandemic, and you can support their Patreon. And I'm getting like discounts on books and free shipping on books and that kind of thing to this day through their Patreon. So consider reaching out to them and supporting them. And again, this is a view of their storefront in the old Crest building that was recently renovated. And again, very cool place, very great people. Love them. Check them out. Yeah, so that's them. And then the book that we're going to be giving away. It's not even out yet. It's called South to America. Can y'all see that? Let me do my influencer hand.
That's it right there. Boom.
South to America, a journey below the Mason-Dixon line to understand the soul of a nation by native daughter, Imani Perry. I can't tell you, this book is absolutely incredible. And it's not exactly about love and it's not exactly about communities, but it encompasses a lot of things that we talked about, like getting to know the space that we're in, the people that we're in, our past, our ugly parts, and our beautiful parts. And I think it's a great example of how to do that. And just really a great read. She kind of basically just takes a journey through the South. She makes stops in Birmingham and in Mobile. So whoever ends up getting this, you are in for a treat. It comes out next week, but so you'll get it eventually. But yeah, that's what the giveaway is. So now we're going to find out who is going to be the winner of this giveaway. Again, thank you everybody for participating. So let's see who we got. There's supposed to be music, but I'm glad it's not because it's really loud and obnoxious. So there's that. So it looks like our winner is Mr. Trammell. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. I've known you for forever, but I still don't know if I got your name right. But yes, Richard, this is you're the winner. So thank you for participating and contributing to our conversation. And to retrieve your prize, just email us at admin@highergroundsociety.org and we'll start exchanging information to redeem your prize, and I'll make sure I can get that to you. We did not, let me check. I don't think anybody participated in my dorky art history. Actually, we did have someone. OMG. Okay, so I'm really excited. The other person who participated is Lee Wilkins, who responded to my little dorky question about who inspired the branding, the Dutch painter from the 20th century who inspired the painting. And the answer is Pierre Mondrian, one of my absolute favorite artists. I wish I could show, I have his stuff all over my apartment. But I'm not going to give you a tour of my apartment. But yes, his artwork is really great. It's very easy, fun to look at, and pleasing to look at for me. I definitely ripped his artwork for to create this. So yes, same for you, Lee. If you will please, thank you for participating, and please email us at admin. Email us again. Well, actually, I already have your email, so I'll just reach out to you and figure out how to get you your Starbucks gift card. So again, thank everybody for participating in the conversation. Really, really loved that. And so we're gonna keep moving. Oh, see, Lee said they were an art history minor in college, so they had a. Sorry to everybody else who was competing because they had a unfair advantage. But yeah, so before we move on, or before we wrap up, I want to hear from everybody here to tell us what you got going on. And the person, I'm going to start from my right. So that person is Ashley. Ashley, tell us about what you got going on, how people can find you, and that sort of thing.
Well, people can find me at my website, which is www.ashleymjonespoetry.com. You can follow my nonprofit, the Magic City Poetry Festival, at the address that is scrolling below as well. That's what's coming up. The Poetry Festival happens in April, so stay tuned. I mean, don't tune in right now because we don't have anything up, but stay tuned, okay, to the website because we'll be showing or talking about what this year's festival will be. Yeah, and I'm still touring with the book, so if any of you out there would like me to come to your school or city or bookstore or book club or whatever, let me know. Go to my website and use the contact page.
Thank you. And so the next person is going to be Elizabeth.
Muted.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. I want you to come. So, alabamacontemporary.org is our website. We do 10 to 12 exhibitions a year, so concurrently, and have 16,000 square feet of gallery space, primarily working only with living artists from everywhere. And so you can go to the website and check out what programs or classes, or just drop by if you're in Mobile. So yeah.
Nice.
Perfect. Last but not least, GI.
Yeah, I am GI the artist on everything social media wise. The website is githeartist.com. You can definitely hit me up there and, fellowship with me via the music that I'm putting out. I do plan on putting out some more music this year. So be on the lookout for that. I ain't gonna say I'm excited about it because I don't really get excited. I'm looking forward to sharing that expression with you all this year, because I think I'm gonna be going in some different artistic directions. So we're gonna try some stuff this year to see how it works out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. But githeartist.com, definitely the place. But you can hit me up on social media as well.
Love to hear that growth. Loving that. Appreciate that. And then just my plug again. This is High Ground Society. Thank you guys so much for giving us some time from your evening. We got a lot of stuff going on in High Ground Society. Some of that is happening in conjunction with Alabama Contemporary Art Center. So we're going to talk about that down the road. So be on the lookout for some developments in that regard. But the main thing we got going on is the High Ground Society podcast, which literally dropped an episode today, the 5th episode of the 2nd season. The podcast is where we literally almost everybody on here has been on the podcast too. So that's funny. Elizabeth will go on there eventually. But we connect with artists, musicians, authors, philosophers, folks who are from Alabama. And we talk about their art and their work and how that, and their philosophies on life and their experiences and all that good stuff. And it's really, really great. So make sure it's everywhere you can find a podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all over the place. So make sure you check that out and follow along, because we have some really cool people coming up in the next couple months. Don't want to miss that. And the other thing is Patchwork Symphony is High Ground Society's baby. It's growing very, very slowly, but rest assured it is growing. It's our album recording project where we're looking for musicians across the state to give them an opportunity to record in a professional recording studio. So go to highgroundsociety.org and then check out our programs section and look at those 2 different programs, podcast and the Patchwork Symphony. Learn more about it and keep an eye on our social media. And we'll be providing updates on both of those programs and how you can participate. And that's all I got. This has been amazing. It's been a great ride, this whole series. Thank you guys so much for participating, and thank you panelists for chatting with me. That's it. That's all, folks. Have a good night, everybody.
Peace.